In the heart of the Arabian desert, where the sun burns the earth, where warriors lived and died by the sword, there rose one man who would never taste defeat. They called him the unsheathed sword of Allah. He changed the course of history, not through politics or poetry, but through courage, strategy, and submission to the one true God. But here's the twist. He was once the greatest enemy of Islam. This is not just a biography. It's the story of a soul transformed, from a warrior of pride to a warrior of faith, from chasing glory to fighting for truth. This is the legend of Khalid Ibn Al-Walid, the sword of Allah, the man who never lost. His last words will shake your heart. If you're moved by this story already, subscribe now to uncover more untold legends of courage and faith. In a land where survival was earned, not given, a boy was born with the heart of a lion into the tribe of Quraysh, known for its pride and power. His name was Khalid. His father, Al-Walid ibn Al-Mughira, was one of the wealthiest and most influential men in Mecca. A man of iron will and a tongue that could twist minds. His voice shook councils, his wealth fed armies, and his son would carry that same fire. From a young age, Khalid was trained for war. While others learned poetry, he learned how to kill. While others studied trade, he studied the blade. By the age of 10, he was already riding horses through the desert like the wind. By 15, he could outmatch men twice his size in the sparring grounds of Quraysh. He wasn't just strong, he was strategic. His mind was sharp, cutting through weakness like his sword would one day cut through the ranks of armies. In a society where honor was measured by strength, Khalid was being forged into something far beyond the ordinary. "You are not like other boys," his father told him, his voice deep and firm. "You were born to lead, not to follow, born to conquer, not to bow." And Khalid believed it. He carried himself with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. He feared nothing, not even death. He believed in power, and only power. But behind his victories and skill, a storm was brewing. A man had emerged from within Khalid's own tribe, preaching something dangerous. A man named Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Khalid heard whispers in the markets. He speaks of one God. He calls the idols false. He challenges the ways of our fathers. To Khalid, it was foolishness, a threat to order, to tradition, to the power of Quraysh. He didn't yet know that this man would one day change his life forever. He sharpened his sword, ready to defend his tribe and destroy the believers. But even in these early days, there was a fire inside Khalid that wasn't fueled by hatred. It was fueled by truth-seeking, by loyalty, purpose, and a thirst for meaning. He didn't yet know that Allah was preparing his sword, tempering him in the heat of ignorance, so when the truth reached him, he would strike harder than ever before. Every legend has a beginning, and Khalid's began with fire. Before he became the sword of Allah, Khalid was the sword raised against Islam. The Battle of Uhud, the day the Muslims nearly lost everything, and at the center of it was Khalid Ibn Al-Walid. It was the year 3 after Hijrah, The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, had defeated the Quraysh at Badr. But now they were coming for revenge. The Quraysh raised a massive army, 3,000 strong, armed with the sharpest blades and the darkest hatred. Among them, Khalid, a rising military genius with a thirst for victory and a mind like a chessboard. He wasn't just a warrior now, he was a commander, and his mission? Crush Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, break the Muslims, and prove their message was nothing but a lie. Khalid's horse shifted under him as he looked across the field. He saw the Muslims lined up. He saw the archers posted on the hill. He saw discipline, courage, faith, and deep in his heart, he felt something strange. Not fear, not doubt, but admiration. Still, he pushed it down. Now was not the time for feelings. Now was war. The battle began, and at first the Muslims were winning. The Quraysh lines broke. Victory seemed certain. But then came the mistake. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, had warned his archers on the hill. Do not leave your position no matter what happens. But some of them saw the spoils of war and disobeyed. The hill was left exposed, and Khalid saw it. He said, "The gate is open." He didn't hesitate. He led a cavalry sweep around Mount Uhud, fast, brutal, precise, and like thunder crashing into glass, he shattered the Muslim ranks. Panic, blood, chaos. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was struck. Rumors spread that he had been killed. He wasn't, but the pain, the loss, was real. Hamza, may Allah be pleased with him, the uncle of the Prophet, was martyred that day. Many companions fell. The believers tasted defeat. And Khalid rode away victorious. But there was no celebration in his heart. He had won the battle, but something in his soul felt hollow. He wondered, what kind of man was this Muhammad, who still stood tall after all this pain? Why did his followers love him so deeply? Why did they fight with such fierce belief, while Quraysh fought only for pride? These questions began to echo in Khalid's mind. And though he didn't know it yet, Allah had placed a crack in his armor. The sword that once struck Islam was slowly being pulled toward the light.
Was it possible, he thought as he looked up at the stars, that I'm fighting the truth?
Some battles are not fought with swords, but with the soul. Khalid Ibn Al-Walid had won many battles, but the one he was about to face was against himself. After Uhud, Quraysh returned to Makkah proud. Songs were sung, praise was heaped. They called Khalid a hero, a mastermind, a warrior without equal. But inside, he felt none of it. Why do they fight so fearlessly, he thought. Why do they pray in the dust and yet seem more peaceful than kings? Is it faith? He remembered the Prophet's face on the battlefield, bleeding, wounded, but still praying. He remembered the eyes of the Muslims, not desperate, but hopeful. Something about it haunted him. This wasn't just a tribe, it was a movement. And the more he tried to ignore it, the louder it called to him. He would ride out at night, far from the city, stare at the sky, and ask questions he never dared to ask before. What if I've been wrong? What if Muhammad is truly a prophet? But doubt is heavy, especially when it threatens everything you've ever believed. Then one night, he heard news. The Muslims were growing. Medina was flourishing. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, had won hearts across Arabia, not with the sword, but with truth. And then he heard something that shook him. His own brother, Walid, had accepted Islam. Khalid's world cracked. My own blood following Muhammad? Why would he leave the comfort of Quraysh unless it was real? Days passed. Khalid began to withdraw. No more boasting, no more riding with Quraysh leaders. Inside, his heart was torn. If I stay with Quraysh, I stay with pride. If I go to Muhammad, I bow to truth. And then, in a single moment of clarity, under the wide desert sky, he made the decision. He turned his horse away from Mecca and began the journey to Medina, not for war, not for glory, but for forgiveness. He rode with two others, Amr ibn al-As and Uthman ibn Talha, silent, humbled. Their hearts pounded, their eyes stared ahead. They were about to enter the city of the man they once fought, the man who never hated them, the man who still prayed for them by name, the man who saw in them what they had never seen in themselves. At the gates of Medina, Khalid dismounted. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was waiting. He smiled, not with anger, but with mercy. And Khalid, the warrior of Quraysh, fell to his knees. Tears fell, hearts softened, history shifted. He said only 3 words, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. The sword had returned to its sheath, and in the hands of God, it would now be unsheathed for truth. Forgiveness is heavier than war, and for the first time, Khalid felt its weight. He stood before the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, head lowered, tears in his eyes. The same man he had once fought with blade and strategy was now looking at him with compassion. He expected anger, condemnation, a cold silence. Instead, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, reached out and placed his blessed hand on Khalid's chest. Praise be to Allah, who guides whom he wills. And then he said the words that Khalid would never forget. I knew, Khalid, that a mind like yours would not stay away from the truth for long. Khalid's heart shattered. Years of resistance, battles, blood, gone. Now, all that remained was peace. He had feared the Prophet's judgment, but found only the warmth of a brother. He had feared rejection, but was welcomed as family. He fell into sujood, and for the first time in his life, he bowed, not to pride, not to idols, but to Allah, and it felt like coming home. He had been taught to stand tall. Now, in prostration, he found his greatest strength. But not everyone welcomed him easily. Some companions still remembered Uhud, still remembered the martyrs, still remembered the blood. But the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, reminded them, leave Khalid alone. By Allah, he has become a sword among the swords of Allah. Khalid still carried the burden. He remembered Hamza. He remembered Uhud. Ya Rasulallah, he said, everything I did before, every strike, every command, Will it be forgiven? The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, smiled gently. Islam wipes away what came before. But Khalid never forgot, and so he made a vow to fight harder for Islam than he ever fought against it. Soon that vow would be tested. The Muslims were facing an army over 100,000 strong, the Byzantine Empire, at the Battle of Mu'tah. The situation was dire. 3 generals were martyred in a single day, and then command fell to Khalid. This was no longer the same man from Uhud. This was the sword of Allah awakened. With unmatched brilliance, he led a strategic retreat, preserved thousands of lives, and returned to Medina not as a runaway, but as a hero. When the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, heard of his actions, he lifted his hands and said, "Khalid is the sword of Allah, unsheathed." And from that moment on, that name would live forever. The warrior who once fought against the truth was now its greatest defender, not through ego, not through rage, but through submission to the Lord of the worlds. They gave him a name not for his past, but for his purpose, the sword of Allah unsheathed. And once that sword was drawn, it would never return to its sheath until justice was served. At the Battle of Mu'tah, the Muslim army was vastly outnumbered. 3 generals were killed, one after another. The army was about to collapse until Khalid stepped forward. He redrew the battle lines. He changed flags to confuse the enemy. He rotated his troops to look like reinforcements had arrived. And in the face of 100,000 Roman soldiers, Khalid outmaneuvered them all. He didn't just win, he saved Islam's army. Even the Romans were shocked. "Who is this man?" they whispered. And back in Medina, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, smiled and said, "That is a sword from the swords of Allah." Then came the Battle of Yarmouk, one of the most decisive battles in human history. The Byzantine Empire had 240,000 troops, Christian Arab allies, and war elephants. The Muslims had only 36,000, but they had Khalid. He fought not for land, not for gold, but for truth. "O soldiers of Islam," he said, giving his final speech before battle, "this may be our last day on earth, so make it your best. If you fall, fall in sujood. If you stand, stand with honor. Fight not for yourself, but for Allah." And the men echoed, "Allahu Akbar." He moved like lightning, personally leading charge after charge. He countered flanks, redirected cavalry, and used the riverbank as a trap. He turned assured defeat into a thunderous victory. The Byzantines were broken. The region would never be the same again. But despite the glory, Khalid never became arrogant. After every victory, he would fall into sujood. He would say, "It is not I who won, but Allah who allowed me to be his tool." He never built a palace, never wore gold, never demanded titles. When the Caliph Umar removed Khalid as general, not from punishment, but to remind the Ummah that victory comes from Allah, not men, Khalid responded, "I fought not for Umar, not for position, but for Allah." His sword was still ready. If Islam needed him, he would fight. If not, he would bow. And when the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, passed away, Khalid wept like a child. "I would give all my victories," he said, "just to fight one more battle by his side." He conquered empires, but was never conquered by pride. He stood before kings, but bowed only to Allah. And he never lost a battle because he never fought for himself. When the battles were over and the sword was lowered, who was Khalid ibn al-Walid, really? To the world, he was a general, a hero, a commander. But to those who truly knew him, he was a man of tears, tenderness, and taqwa. He would pray alone for hours in the night. He would whisper dua beneath his breath before entering any city. He feared not death, but disappointing his Lord. He once said to a companion, "The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, walked on this earth, and I fought against him. How can I ever sleep in comfort knowing that?" Even as he became the mightiest general in Islamic history, he never allowed the past to be erased, because that past made his faith real. When a soldier praised him before battle, Khalid said, "Don't praise me. If I win, it's because of Allah. If I fall, it's by His wisdom." He lived with dust on his face and humility in his heart. No gold, no crown, no pride. He once removed his own armor and gave it to a poor soldier. He would walk through the camp unseen, leaving coins at the tents of widows. "Let only Allah know my charity," he once whispered. "The rest is between me and Him." He fought battles with strategy, but he fought Shaitan with sujud. He lifted swords with power, but lifted his hands in dua with trembling fingers. He stood before kings, but never missed a single prayer. The world saw a warrior, but Allah saw a worshipper. His body, once unshaken by war, was now trembling. His skin, once sunburned by battles, was now pale with fever. The undefeated general was now preparing to meet the only one he never fought, Allah. His friends gathered around him, silently. Some wept, others couldn't look. This man had commanded tens of thousands, but now all he had was a small room, a thin blanket, and the weight of eternity. "I've fought over 100 battles," he said, his voice breaking. "My body is covered in wounds, yet I die in a bed like a camel." He wept. "May the eyes of cowards never rest." His hand reached for his sword, which lay next to him, untouched. He ran his fingers along the blade one last time, then slowly let go. "Ya Allah, you know I only fought for you." A companion knelt beside him. "O Khalid, why do you weep? You are the sword of Allah, the undefeated. You brought victory wherever you went." Khalid smiled faintly. "Victory? No. True victory is meeting Allah with a clean heart." He held his son's hand. "My son, I leave you no palace, no wealth, but I leave you a name that feared no one but Allah. Hold firm to Islam, and you will never be defeated." In his final moments, his lips began to move, whispering a dua. "La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah. Allahumma, forgive me." His breathing slowed. He closed his eyes. The candle died. The man who never lost now won the only battle that mattered. A warrior's soul returned to its Lord. His small, unmarked grave in Homs has no gold, no statue, no shrine. On it, someone wrote, "Here lies the sword of Allah, broken, yet forever sharp in the hearts of believers." He left this world without glory, but his name shines in the skies of Jannah. The story of Khalid ibn al-Walid is more than battles and glory. It is a story of transformation, of faith, of humility, of courage in the face of doubt. What does his life teach us today? That even the greatest among us can change. That strength without faith is hollow. That true victory is measured not by conquest, but by the state of the heart. Khalid teaches us that weapons are tools, but it is the intention behind them that defines a person. He fought not for himself, but for a cause greater than any throne or crown, a cause rooted in justice, mercy, and submission to God's will. When faced with life's battles, whether on the battlefield, in our homes, or within ourselves, we can face challenges with courage, accept truth even when it is hard, humble ourselves before God, and seek forgiveness for our past mistakes. And if a man once known as the fiercest enemy became the greatest defender, what hope do you have? Your heart is not sealed. Your story is not finished. Your sword can be raised or lowered. Will you be a sword or a servant, a fighter for ego or a warrior for truth? If Khalid's story moved you, inspired you, or opened your heart, join us. Subscribe and share this story, because legends like these remind us all that the greatest battles are fought inside, and the greatest victories are those granted by Allah.